Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, Pokémon Gold Glitch. I'm an avid Pokémon fan, so when I finally got my hands on Pokémon Gold version, I was thrilled. I noticed, though, that since it was an old hand-me-down that the battery inside had drained and save files couldn't be created anymore. But I couldn't wait to try it and started a new game anyway. The graphics were great compared to the blue version I had, and I was really happy and just filled with excitement. I picked a Zinda, well, the tiny traveler, and don't ask me why, though, and loved him to pieces. I named my rival Ben, just as I always do, and defeated him in our first battle with ease, accrediting it to my partner more than my battle skills. Everything was going great. I love this game, and loved all of my Poke, but in the back of my mind, I still remembered that all of this would soon end, and the battery wouldn't last forever. I hated the idea of losing my team after all we had been through together and accomplished. I had a female affiliate named Cotton, a male PIDG, Yato named Ace, a male Gastiel, Y named Spooky, a female Centret named Maddie. When the inevitable happened, and the little red light on my Game Boy Color began flickering, I took a deep breath and looked my team over for the last time. I gave each of my Pokémon a goodbye. I looked at my partner the longest, a strong young key lover finally, and started to tear up in the moment. I get attached to my Pokémon, Thorn. I'm sorry I did this. I should have waited to fix the cartridge before all of this happened. Forgive me, partner, goodbye. I shed a little tear, knowing all the tough battles and happy moments had gone to waste, and turned off the game. That night, I went to bed as normal after the incident. Turning off my lamp, I hopped into my warm, soft bed and closed my eyes. Wait, something was wrong. I tossed and turned, fidgeted, repositioned my pillow, and shut my eyes tight. Nothing. I couldn't sleep, but why? Something just wasn't right to the feeling of my normally relaxing room. It was gone, and hot air hung silently, almost pulling me. I sat up in the darkness and saw very small, very faint flickering red light in the corner of my eye. So I pushed back my blankets and, forgetting the lamp, began to shuffle across the floor, but I stopped. A squirming in my gut told me not to move another inch. Something was really wrong here. Chills ran down my spine like ice. And that was when I heard it. A distorted Pokémon's cry, sounding like it was coming in through a poor quality TV channel. I rubbed my eyes and looked, panicking, around my dark room. The red light was gone. I decided I had been sleepwalking, and found my bed again, and heard it again this time, lower pitch, closer. I sat bolt upright, eyes wide. Who's there? No answer, until his left. His aching, barely audible voice, like rustling leaves. You abandoned me. I gasped in fear, heart thudding against my chest. I could see nothing. Nothing except that little red light again. I realized it was a reflection off of my mirror, and found the source my bedside table. I had put my Game Boy on it, picking it up weakly. I looked at the dim, flickering light. The screen to flickered. That wasn't right. The Game Boy Color had no light to its screen, just pixels. But it lit briefly, a pale blue, and went blank once more. I stared numbly at it while my heart continued to hammer. The voice returned. a little clearer than before, but still faint. "It's okay, I forgive you." PPA Ardner. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. The hair on the nape of my neck stood on end, and suddenly I saw a pair of cloudy, pale, blue eyes directly in front of mine. They had no pupils, no shine. They were just dull. I screamed, scooting backward against my headboard in fear. I for GI, IV, and now can be together, it said, as an icy sensation swept over me. I could barely breathe. A pain flared somewhere inside my chest, and as those dead eyes stared into my soul, blackness crept into the edges of my vision. As the last of my consciousness drifted out of reach, that morbid static voice rang in my ears. "I will be with you now, with you forever." When I finally woke up, I was in my pajamas, my bed sheets twisted up around my sweat-soaked body. I looked around my room in silent dread for those haunting eyes, but they were nowhere to be seen. "Hey, I know it's Saturday, but are you going to wake up at all?" came my brother's voice from the hallway. I sighed, my shaking hands unfurling the blanket. It was all just a dream still. I couldn't help thinking about what happens to Pokémon after you erase the game file. I still felt sorry about it. I hopped out of my bed and made for the hallway, smiling at my own fear. In the corner of my eye I saw it, my key lava, in the reflection of my full-length mirror. He smiled his cold, dead smile. And when I looked back, he was gone. I will be with you now, with you forever. The second story. Nobody loves tragedy. It's way past 6 p.m. I'm going home. Now how about you? A plump, middle-aged man asked James as he stood up from his office chair. He was pulling up his pants while tucking his shirt in. "Go ahead, Ben. I think I'll stay. Mr. Walter wants this PowerPoint presentation by morning," James replied. That slave driver. He could have done it by himself, or he should have let his secretary do that. What is that presentation for anyway? Ben was now standing behind James with his arms akimbo. "Marketing strategy. S going to present this in the executive meeting tomorrow." James paused from his typing and shook his hands a little. His secretary has something to do. "I think she'll be working overtime as well." Ben smiled, not IL, while loosening his necktie. "I see, so it's not going to be a lonely night after all. You have a pretty voluptuous secretary as company, eh? This is your chance. Everyone in the department has the feeling she likes you. You're crazy. I'm a married man, remember? My playing days are over. Don't influence me with your file-undering antics," James said, laughing. Okay. I'd better go now. Will certainly nag me again. See you tomorrow then, bro. By the way, old man Larry says there are ghosts in this office. The only ghost I'll see would be yours if you don't stop bothering me. So get out of here before I break your neck." When Ben left, James continued with his work until he finished all the slides for the presentation. He thought about the secretary who was still in the office. He had always entertained dirty thoughts about this woman, courteous, voluptuous, and an enduring face. There were all the ingredients of his objective desire. Since he came to the company 6 months ago, he noticed how this secretary stole glances at him, as she shied away whenever they would talk or be near each other. In his experience, these are signs that a woman likes a man. No female who had crossed his path and manifested the symptoms could ever escape him. But this was before he married Jane. On the night before their wedding, he swore to Jane with his whole heart that no woman's charm could ever break his fidelity to her. She believed him even though she knew how many young women had fallen prey to his deceitful charms. And indeed, for almost 2 years now, James had remained faithful to her, except in his thoughts. Tonight, he thought, should be his rest from the boredom of married life. I'm still a man, and a man has to give in once in a while. I deserve a break. They were the only ones in that office, James, the secretary, and old man Larry. James, I suppose I can begin mopping your area. I have waited long enough already. The janitor felt some strange vibrations as he came nearer to James. He sensed something negative was about to happen to this guy. Where are you going, James? Are you not going home yet? Why does it concern you? Just do your job, and don't mind me, James uttered with a little irritation. Old man Larry was a well-known weirdo in this building. He would claim he could see spirits and predict people's future by reading their palms. Some ladies in the company believed him though, and they would ask him to read their palms. Others would avoid having conversations with him for fear of hearing scary tales. James was now approaching the boss's office. Beside its doorway was the secretary's area. "Hi, Trina. I finished the slide presentation Sir Walter asked me to do. I sent it to you on email," James said to the busy lady. Good for you then. I'm just about to open my inbox," Trina said, glancing at the man beside her desk, then went back to her computer. "Yes, it's here now." She moved and clicked the mouse to save the file to her disk. "Aren't you hungry yet? You've been working late. I think you should take a break," James uttered. "Not really. I took a heavy snack this afternoon," she replied shyly, but did not mind the interruption. "But that was this afternoon. It's already evening," James insisted. "Listen, I know this restaurant down the street and they have this eat all you can promo. Come with me, my treat." Well, I am a little bit hungry, and besides, I'm just reading my emails now. Okay then, let's go." Trina stood up from her desk and went with James. She was wearing a grey blazer and skirt. James slightly looked at her legs. She was wearing black stockings, so James felt a little disappointed. He had hoped her legs were bare, and then they went out of the office. As they were walking along the corridor toward the elevator, Larry was standing by looking at them. His eyes seemed more focused on James. The couple stopped for a moment. "What are you looking at, old man?" James said with annoyance. "Son, I advise you to go home now." The old man spoke with concern. His eyes were staring at James's left arm. "Mind your own business, old man," replied James angrily. "Come on, Trina, let's go. I'm warning you both, you two have to part ways. A disturbed spirit is following you. You're just inviting bad luck by going together." The janitor looked at Trina. James pulled his lady off a seat, trying to forbid her from hearing the janitor, but he did not realize Trina was a fan of old man Larry's psychic abilities. "Wait, James, let's see what he's got to say," Trina said while countering James's pull. "So what is this spirit you're talking about?" "Well, this one is different. It's not like those that have been following you before. It's a human spirit, but dark like a shadow with smoke coming from its figure. It seems to be holding a knife, and its right hand. This spirit is not really after you. Trina is trying to hold your friend's arm, but it can't get a good grip of it." James interrupted the talk and pulled Trina toward the elevator. Old man Larry followed the couple with a troubled stare as the elevator closed before his clairvoyant eyes. Inside the elevator, Trina shared to James all the things old man Larry had been telling her that she had spirited admirers. Some followed her all the way to her house, and some just waited for her to arrive in the office. They were harmless, though they had even sometimes protected her. James never believed in ghosts, but he listened very intently to Trina's stories as a charming prince listening to his damsel's woes. Down the building, James and Trina chanced upon the security guard sitting in the receptionist's desk. They waved at the guard, signaling that they were leaving the building. The guard thought peculiar that he smelled a foul odor of burnt flesh when the couple passed by. As they went out of the glass door, the guard glimpsed a shadowy human figure clutching the man's left arm. Smoke was rising from its head, dismissing it as a mere illusion. He closed his eyes and the shadowy form disappeared, and so did the couple. The two office mates ate, drank and told their tales to each other until almost midnight, until they found a way how to end their night. Inside the motel room, the unruly couple found themselves undressing each other. They kissed, touched, and caressed. The room was air-conditioned, and it had a large bed. Beside it were a desk and chair, and a huge oval mirror when both of them almost had their clothes removed. James glanced upon the mirror. He saw something that made him duck out of the bed. "What's the matter? Something wrong?" The puzzled Trina asked his partner. "I think I saw something there in the mirror," James retorted, gasping. "So what was it that you saw?" "It looks like a shadow, almost in figure, with smoke rising from it. It was holding a knife and was about to stab me in the back, so I jerked away." James' lust for Trina disappeared at once because of the vision. He realized it was past midnight, so he told Trina it was time for him to go home. There were a lot of people along the street where James was headed. The fire trucks had blocked both sides of the road, so he was not able to drive through. He got out of his car and passed through a bunch of onlookers. A fireman blocked him. "Excuse me, but I live along that area. I need to see what's happening," yelled James to the fireman, but he did not seem to hear him. A policeman who happened to be his neighbor saw him from the crowd. "Let him through, Sanchez," the policeman said while clasping the fireman's shoulder. James was able to get through the cordon accompanied by the policeman. "James, around 6:30 p.m. the neighbors heard an explosion from your house. Luckily, the firefighters were able to contain the blaze. We suspect it was the tank that caused the bang." The policeman spoke with regret. "Oh no, my house. My wife, Eliza, is she okay?" The policeman did not want him to see the corpse, but James was uncontrollably insistent. Inside the ambulance, James, still dazed in shock, saw the remains of his spouse. Burned beyond recognition, some smoke was still rising from her head, and clutched in her right hand was the knife in the oval mirror of the motel room. The third story, cabin fever, stranded in the middle of that colorless gray period that one gets in the deepest throes of winter. Cabin fever was starting to set in the only signs of life. On the outside were the headlights of the drivers brave enough to take on the dangerous, otherwise dead roads. Nature's makeshift bridges, made up mostly of broken tree limbs, fallen trees, and power lines, were everywhere and posed a great threat to those stupid drivers who wanted to go dog knows where. Even more dangerous was all the black ice by day. It was present yet avoidable. By night it was deadly, and it blended in perfectly with its environment. Black on black like some cold, heartless chameleon out to and hellbent and showing people their maker, or lack thereof. Life on the inside wasn't much better. Here the only signs of life were the dancing, and of flames and our own slowly beating hearts. It was as if we were all living in the colonial era, surviving by the light that emanated from the candle, that cast an eerie glow. There was nothing but such to keep us company. We were all in the darkest shadows, cast by a town-wide blackout. And it'd been like that for days. Perhaps as many as 2 weeks had gone by since the last pulse of electricity had faded. For me, Spencer Princeton, the small town of North Brookfield seemed unreachable from the threshold of my front door. The ethereal blackness that covered the whole town was so alien. There was a mysterious, omnipresent hostility to it. I said goodbye to my family who, understandably so, had left me in charge of looking over the house, while they looked for a shelter that wasn't filled to capacity. As soon as they faded into the night, I knew I was alone. Cut off from the rest of the world, there was nothing to do but write and read. In the deepest pits of the realm of horror, I could only lay still into fantasies of my darkest dreams, bursting through some psychic wall into reality whispers within the crackles of fire, demons within the shadows dancing, enticing me. That night I had the most horrible nightmare, as sleep dominated over my physical and mental woe. In my dream I saw nothing other than the decay and rot brought on by some worldwide disaster, some unknown, apocalyptic cataclysm. From within the deepest dungeons inside my mind, I envisioned myself walking the dark streets of my town, which sat dormant and days dead, past all the blackened houses, all the storefronts that were left only to the stray kids to rule, and past the rotting corpses that littered the street. In my most natural calm, I sidestepped and stepped over the bodies of people I once knew. In this alien world it was only me and the dead to keep me warped company. In a blinding flash of light and a deafening burst of sound, the dream world is brought back to light, brought back to life. I watched in awe as the dead stood up in a flurry of stiff, cracking, primitive movement, like a butterfly flopping its wings in front of a stop-motion camera. Completely unaware of me, they all began to partake in an orgy of life of sorts. They lived through death in the most macabre way. The Walking Dead mopped the streets and marched, en masse, into oblivion and into the darkness beyond. I wake up and feel even more dead than the walking corpses, plunged into a darkness deeper than my dream. A sudden, inexplicable fear washed over me. Paralyzed with fear I sat, and willingly, and let my eyes adjust to the darkness. I looked over and felt so stupid as the realization hits me that the candles went out while I was asleep. I got up to find the matches, and a new terror crawled up the nape of my neck. Not able to shake the feeling of being watched, I made haste to get into the kitchen, checking over my shoulders as I went. I expected to be confronted by some unspeakable terror stalking me from behind. The shadows played with my psyche, and horrifying demons formed out of the anonymous shadows that mercilessly enveloped the house. The shadows reached out to me, they spoke to me, they beckoned to me. I found the matches that would deliver me from the darkness and keep me safe, keep me alive as I walked alone in my house. I saw from the corners of my eyes the shadows retreating to the corners and creases created by the walls. Always surrounded, my heart rate accelerated as I turned to keep the demons at bay, in turn making myself vulnerable with my flamed, and seeing while I could think of nothing other than how, with every more I made, I'd run the risk of the flame blowing out. Then I'd be really fucked. Laying on the couch in a fetal position, and sometimes twitching as the whispers grew louder and louder, I gave up on reciting the beckoning calls of the living blackness within the shadows. Still continuing to increase in volume, the voices rose to a grand crescendo, nearly screaming into my ears. My head was in a vice of noise, and the clamp was pressing against my temple, ready to crush my skull at the slightest change in decibel level. Then, as suddenly as the nose started, it stopped. Intrigued and relieved at the sudden peace that befell the house, I propped my head up with a couple of pillows. With my head up, and my ears perked, an incessant ringing in my ears developed. The noise came at 1-second intervals. Once Mississippi, ring to Mississippi. Ring 3 Mississippi, ring Jesus Christ, it was the phone. The power grid must have gone back online while I was in the grip of some mental breakdown. Slowly making my way up the stairs, the phone's ring grew louder ever so gradually. Walking down the hall, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, as if acting as the sentries against some unknown adversary. I passed by rooms filled only by dusty furniture, the darkness, and the unspeakable evils that had been plaguing me. The demons were in my house, and there was no denying it. The thought of sharing my home with these beasts, only to be tormented day after day, deeply disturbed me. Despite my state of sheer terror, I casually walked down the hallway at a slow pace, so as to keep my calm and not attract attention to myself. In front of the home library, I stood at the threshold, debating whether or not to answer the phone. Taking the step, and I could almost feel the shadows caressing me. A sense of weightlessness came over me, as if I was suspended in an ethereal dream. Again, I walked toward the desk on which the phone sat, and with my hand mere inches over the receiver, I stood still as if waiting for something to happen. I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I asked. Nothing. The only sound that came out was the subliminal humming of dead air. "Hello?" I demanded as I became more and more irate. Nothing then. In an explosion of sound that almost made me drop the phone, the sound of static and unintelligible rambling deafened and dazed me temporarily. The static died down to a low rumble almost instantly, but the phantom caller, speaking in strange tongues, still spoke as loud as he did just seconds ago. From under the noises I could hear you and me being repeated over and over again. You and me, just you and me. The ultimate realization hit me like a cement drop. The power wasn't back on when I walked down the hall and through the house. Not a single light flashed. Random times did not blink on and off the faces of the electronic clocks. I wanted to throw up. It felt like I'd just been jumped by a brick wall. The phone rang again. I feared picking it up. I did so nonetheless. Nothing static, Tom's you and me. I didn't bother putting the receiver back on the hook. I turned to walk out of the room and admit defeat. No dice. The door to the library slammed shut in my face with a surreal calm. Depressed stoicism. I tried the door. No, to my surprise it opened without any problems. I did not want to exit the room though. I waited for someone to come up the stairs and face me. I waited to see someone at the end of the hall suddenly materialize. I waited to feel the icy hand of death come up from behind and wrap themselves around my throat. No such thing happened. In front of me the hall stretched in length as if I'd been walking for miles on end and suddenly stopped. It stretched, and at the end a black void materialized from the collective shadows, congealing into one mass like a blood clot obstructing an artery. In an instant everything snapped back to where it had once been. Then the doors, that were just seconds before ajar, started violently slamming open. and closed by themselves. It was as loud and violent as any 21 gun salute. From the darkness of the threshold of the doors I could see faces. Blacker still, peeking out whenever the doors opened. Open, face slammed shut. And repeat the whole ordeal was like some fucked up, sadistic, psychotic, demonic whack-a-mole game that lasted for what seemed like hours. After an unbearably long dim innuendo, the entire situation halted, as if someone stopped time itself in its tracks. My heart was pounding in and my blood was pumping as fast as possible. I jumped up to the door and quickly closed it behind me. I was not going out into that hallway, even if my life depended on it. The adrenaline was coursing my veins, and I hardly let out a pep, as a figure suddenly materialized out of the second-story window, staring through me with eyes that were almost invisible to my naked eye. I watched as the being, darker than the night itself, back up and repeatedly rammed into the window, pain trying to break through. I guess I would leave the library after all. Running through the hallway, constantly looking over my shoulder to see if anything was giving me chase. I quickly turned a sharp right and descended down the stairs, carefully placing my steps as to not fall down. It wasn't so hard, anyone so uncoordinated as to fall down a flight of stairs surely deserves to die. At the bottom of the staircase I was face to face with another horrifying entity. Its face and palms were pressed up against the glass, which made it look like a bloated, boorish beast. Anything other than its face and hands were invisible when put against the night outside. Its eyes were as black and soulless as its skin was pale. A disturbingly wide grin revealed teeth that were a disgustingly rotted mix of greens, yellows, and blacks. Its short, quick and shallow breath instantly appeared on the cold glass and almost as rapidly disappeared. I speedily turned on my right heel and sprinted down the first floor, hallway past windows which were occupied by similarly terrifying monsters. I stop as I almost run into a wall, feeling all of their eyes on my eyes slowly turn to face the beasts. Every single one of them looks at me with a primal, greedy, ravenous hunger that chilled me down to the marrow. Everywhere I moved, their eyes and their eyes only would follow. I screamed and they found sadistic delight in my suffering. Their breath fogged up the glass as the demons breathed more and more rapidly. Their fists and palms hammered against the glass as they drew and raven chant, as they awaited their prey's surrender. Drowning in noise and sheer terror, I closed my eyes and blocked my ears and screamed. Above my shrill cries I hear a humming. A brilliant radiance burns through my tightly closed eyelids. I opened my eyes to see nothing but pure whiteness, and as my sight adjusted, nothing beyond the windows. The power is back on. The lights are all on, and for the first time in days the clocks tell the time. I sighed a long breath of relief. I relished in the light. Then, with the return of electric life, the return of my family followed in close suit. Not telling anyone of my ordeal, I walked into the living room and shut off the lights, happily anticipating the comfortable flow of the television. As the light goes out, my jogged as all the demonic horrors congregated around the living room windows. I was pale and frozen by fear. My parents looked at me, and then outside the window and asked, "What do you see?" "There's nothing out there,"